Okay, we're in Chapter 1 on the whole numbers. This is Section 1.3, Multiplication and Division of Whole Numbers. So let's start with multiplication. What are some mathematical symbols that indicate multiplication? Well, we've got the x, which is called the times symbol, so it just normally looks like a times. An example would be 4 times 5. We have the dot, and it looks like 2 and then times 6. And finally, you can use parentheses, and you can separate each number with parentheses. You could have one number out in front and then parentheses around the other one, or parentheses around the first one, and then the number on the outside here. And all of these represent times. So you could take 4 times 5 and get 20, or 2 times 6 and get 12, or 3 times 7 in any of those fashions and still get 21. Now, products and factors. In the expression 3 times 4, the whole numbers 3 and 4, just the numbers themselves, are called factors. And then the 3 times 4, the whole thing with the dot in between, that's called the product. Now, if you think about it, multiplication is really equivalent to repeated addition. And when you're young and learning how to do multiplication, usually what you do is if you have 5 times something, you're going to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're going to add. And so if we have something like 3 times 4, we're going to add 4 3 times. We're going to take 4 plus 4 plus 4, and that gives us 12. Or if we write it in the other order, 4 times 3, well, that's going to be 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 4 times. So basically you're adding 3 4 times, and then that also gives us 12. Now we have a couple properties here that work with multiplication. The first is the commutative property of multiplication. So if we have a and b are any whole numbers, then it says we can take a times b, and that's the same thing as b times a. And we kind of saw that here previously, 3 times 4 or 4 times 3, they both gave us 12. Then we have the multiplicative identity property. So if a is any whole number, then if we take a times 1, this is the multiplicative identity, we get back a. Or we can take 1 times a, and we still get a. And so if we take any number times 1, no matter if we take it in the front or in the back because of the commutative property, we're going to get back what we started with the a. Now, if we multiplication by 0, here if we have a, again, being any whole number, then if we take any number times 0, well, we get 0 as our answer. And we can take 0 times any number, and we get 0 here as well. So no matter what we take times 0, we're going to end up with 0 as our answer. And then finally, the associative property of multiplication. If we have 3 numbers a, b, and c, they're whole numbers, then we can take and multiply a times b times c, or a times b times c. And we can do basically rearranging, associating the b and c first, and then associating the a and b on the second one. And we're multiplying, and so the order doesn't matter really which we do first. We can take b times c and then times a, or we can take a times b first and then times c. And an example would be here. We have 2, which would be our a, times the b plus c, or b times c, which is a 4 times 5. And that's equal to, now if we associate the first two instead, 2 times 4 times 5. Well, what we do, remember, is everything in parentheses first. So 4 times 5 is 20. Here, 2 times 4 is 8. Now we have 2 times 20, which is 40. Or here we have 8 times 5, which is also 40. So again, the associative property means we can associate it. So it's kind of like addition. And remember, over here we said, it was repeated addition. And so multiplication and addition work in the same way. We have the commutative property, the multiplicative identity property, and then we have this associative property. Now, what if we want to multiply large numbers? 3 times 4 we can do is 12, but what if we're doing larger numbers? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to put the larger of the two numbers on the top, line up as we did with addition and subtraction with the ones column, tens, hundreds, and so on, and then we're going to multiply. And so an example would be this. So let's say we take 735 times 28. So 735 is the larger number, so we put it on top. The 28 is smaller, so we put it on the bottom. We line up the ones and the tens, and then we multiply. And we start here at the bottom right corner. So we're going to take 8 times 5 first, and that's going to give us 40. So we'll put a 0 here, and it's kind of like with addition. We're going to have to carry. Now we'll take 8 times 3. Well, that's going to be 24 plus 4, so that's going to give us 28. Going to carry 2. Now 7 times 8, that's going to give us 56, then 57, 58. All right, and so that's going to be what we get when we do the 8 times the 735. Now what we have to do is we have to move over to the tens column and multiply the 2 times everything. Now here, this is going to be a space. So if you want to put a line here so you remember that there's nothing here, and now we take 2 times 5 and we get 10, and we put that 0 under the 2, and now we carry the 1, and we have 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7, so that goes in the next space over. Now there's nothing to carry here, so now we can just go over and take 2 times 7 and get 14. And so we'll put our 4 here. If we carry the 1, well, it just comes over here. And so here was multiply, but now we have to add the two things we multiplied together. So we'll take 0 plus nothing is 0. 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 plus 7 is going to be 15. 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 4 is 10. Carry the 1, and then that gives us 2. And so here our answer is 20,580. Okay. And so that's how you would do it. And you could do all kinds of examples with basically putting the larger number on the top and the smaller number on the bottom, and then just multiplying and multiplying and being sure to carry. And when you're carrying, I think the key thing is remembering which one of these is the thing. Maybe you have to use a different color. So maybe I should have used red when I multiplied with the 2, and then my carrying, I would understand, oh, I have to do the 2 with the red instead of, oh, was it 2 times 3 is 6 plus 4 is 10, or was it 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7? So sometimes you have to really be sure to pay attention what you're doing there. Now, sometimes we multiply and there's zeros on the end of one of the numbers. And that makes it so it's kind of nice because we don't actually have to multiply that, because remember, 0 times anything is 0. And so an example, I'm going to do both of these. And so what I'm going to do is put the one with the zeros on the bottom. So the other one's going to be on top. And so I'm going to put 95 on top. And then I'm going to multiply by. And with the 90, I'm going to put the 0 out to the side like this. Okay. And really, I'm not going to multiply this piece here. I'm just going to drop that 0 down. And now I'm going to multiply the numbers here, the 9 times 5, carry the 9 times 9, and then add whatever is left. So 5 times 9 is 45, carry the 4. 9 times 9 is 81, plus 4 is 85. Okay. And that's what we can do when we have those zeros, because if we would have thought about this, 95 times 90, so we would have had 0, 0, then we had a space, then we had 9 times 5, which was going to be our 45, and then 81 plus 4 is 85, and then we have to add, and that would be 0, 5, 5, 8, and we get the same thing, but we had to do that extra line of multiplication with zeros, which is nothing, and so we just made it and say, okay, well, we're dropping the 0 down, and then we just multiply the rest. And that's what we're going to do here too. So we're going to take 121 times 250, and we're going to put that 0 out here. Now we just multiply the 5 first. So 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Now, I don't have that one. And guess what? I don't have that one either. And so now I have 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2. And now I carry, or add. And so it's 0, 5. Then I have 2. I have a 10, carry 1, 3. Okay, so 30250 would be my answer here. So 30250. And over here I had the 8550. All right. And again, when you move that over, you just drop down that 0 and then you start with the next one. And so when you drop down that 0, if you have multiple lines, that line gets nothing here. And then after you do this one, the next line after that doesn't. So you have to remember to put those 2 spaces in. And then you just have those 2 lines you have to multiply instead of having 3 lines, one of them all being zeros. All right, so I'm going to pause with that and make another section here in a little bit with division.